Hello warriors, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'm talking about believing as a warrior believes. Hi, I'm Nile Harris, a life strategist, business consultant, and speaker, working with growing entrepreneurs and professionals to make the jump and pursue their passion with a plan by gaining clarity, setting goals, and getting things done. Now, before we get started with believing as a warrior believes, I would love it if you would subscribe to my YouTube channel, turn on the alerts so you know when I post new content, and follow me at I am Nile Harris on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and let's connect on LinkedIn. I would love for us to stay connected and have more conversations with one another. Now, today's topic, believing as a warrior believes, is interesting because I don't think most people view themselves as a warrior, and that's why I want to talk about it. If you've ever wondered why I call you all warriors, it's because you are one. And I think that it's something that we forget. We hear the word warrior and we might picture in our mind someone who's lonely, aggressive, violent. They vanquish their enemies and their foes, and they're these larger than life mythical figures. Typically we see them as male, and while some of that is true, and some of it is, myth writing, they're all based on one thing, and they're based on us as people. Everyday people are warriors, and somewhere along the way, I don't know where, maybe it's, because of these movies or social media, whatever it is, we feel that warriorhood is something that's beyond us, and we, don't have it within us to be warriors. When the thing is, we're all born with the warrior spirit, and call it, the instinct to survive and the need to thrive thereafter. But we're all born with this innate will to want to live, and that will, over time, as we grow up and we create stories and narratives about ourselves, and we create self-limiting beliefs through either what we experience, what we see, or what is told to us, that warrior in us can become quieter and quieter. But we know it exists because we see people every day who are kind of these everyday heroes, or we see our sports figures who are, Michael Jordan I'm from Chicago. So when I think of a warrior, sometimes I tend to think of Michael Jordan and the Bulls and the three-peat, and what an awesome time that was in Chicago. But let's not let us distract from how we can be warriors in our own life, because the simple fact is that we're all warriors, men and women, because a warrior truly is a balance between the masculine and the feminine. And while history has glorified male warriors, there are also plenty of female warriors, real and mythical, in history and throughout all sorts of doctrines. So let's set aside the idea, or the notion, the false idea and the false notion that being a warrior is about being masculine and it's about being a man. When we talk about believing as a warrior believes, warriors have a mission. They have something that they are trying to accomplish, and they have a vision of how that's going to accomplish. Their focus may be singular, but they are committed, and they are convicted, and they are dedicated, and they are disciplined to that mission. And they might do some other things, and they might have some other interests, but that mission is something that calls them into their future. It pulls at them, and they become experts at achieving that mission and setting up a strategy to answering that call. They're not afraid of that call. They don't wait to answer that call. They might strategize on the best way to do that, but they don't wait. They go for it, and it does not matter if they have fear, because warriors are afraid. they're also courageous, and they act in spite of their fear. And I want you, when I talk about believing as a warrior believes, to believe that you have a mission, and think about what that mission is, your life mission. It doesn't have to be something that's professionally related. If that's the way you want to look at it, please do so. But think about personally what that personal mission is and what your warrior self is. For me, my call to warriorness, or the voice of my warrior, is living is my love letter to life. I don't want to live in fear. I don't ever want to look back on my life and think, I wish I had done that, and regret not doing something out of fear. There are times in my life where I have not done something out of fear. I wanted to be a naval aviator. I wanted to go to the Naval Academy out of high school, and become a naval officer eventually, and I didn't. Because I let people talk me out of it, and I let people kind of get into my head about what it means to dedicate and commit your life, not just to the military, but you are saying that you are willing to make the ultimate sacrifice in the name of your country and everyone in it. And I let some other people create stories in my mind about what that meant. But I was also only 16, 17, so I forgive myself for that. But that's kind of that warrior spirit for me. And that's something that's always resonated with me. And when I found myself at a point in my life where I was not acting despite my fears anymore, I was, in an environment, in a work environment where I was just always waiting. I was waiting to be recognized. I was proving myself and waiting for someone to appreciate me, and waiting to be promoted, and waiting and waiting and waiting long beyond the time that I should have been there. And it wasn't until I had a wake-up call. My blood pressure was so high, and the doctors looking at me, I think in amazement that I was alive and able to drive a car at this point. And I wasn't even at the doctor for my blood pressure. I was there for something totally mundane. But that's when I decided to dig down and dig deep and reignite that warrior spirit that had always been there. It never goes anywhere. It might be dormant, it might be quiet, it might be just pacing around in the background, but I promise you that when you tap into your warrior spirit, when you ask that warrior spirit to come alive, it will. And that's why I'm asking you to believe as a warrior believes. Warriors also have a set of values. And one of the things I want you to do is write down 3 or 4 values. I have 7 guiding principles that I have developed over the course of my life. Most of them came from hard-fought lessons. One of my biggest lessons that I learned was believing people when they show you who they are. And so that is definitely one of my biggest guiding principles. Another guiding principle I have is meeting people where they are. And the reason that one was so hard for me to learn was because early in my career as a leader, leading teams, I received feedback that my level of frustration when I found that people couldn't do what I could do or didn't meet my expectations, that my level of frustration was inappropriate and it was demotivating. And really, you need to meet people where they are and help them get to where you want them to be. That's part of being a leader. And I was so grateful to the person who told me and brought that to my attention in the first place, but then also helped me understand what it means to be a servant leader. And that is when, and luckily this was in my late 20s, early 30s. So this was a point in my life, in my leadership journey, where I was crafting who I wanted to be as a leader. And I came across, I shouldn't say I didn't come across it, but that's when I was introduced to the concept of the servant leader. And that's who I wanted to be. And so warriors have a set of values, and those are just 2 of my 7. But that's what guides them and pulls them toward what is meant for them. And it keeps them off of paths that they shouldn't be on. And it also pulls people toward them, pulls people into the campaign, if you will, pulls people into that universe and into your orbit. And when you are a warrior, you are also the calm in a storm, because warriors aren't just running around and wild and doing stuff. They're disciplined, committed. They get those values, and people gravitate toward that. People, if you think about warriors, and they led people into battle. One of the 300, the movie with Leonidas, and he's leading that small contingent of his soldiers into battle. His calmness, his strength, his courage, all of those things come together and pull people toward him. They followed him to his death. Now, I'm not suggesting that you have people follow you to their death, but you want to create a space for people as a warrior to want to follow you and allow you to lead them. So when we talk about living as a leader and what that means, a lot of times in our very hierarchical society, and I think this just comes from, corporate America, it also comes from public education and just being in this really hierarchical society where our worth, our, who we are is tied to our title. And, if your title's here, then you're here, and everybody should be paying deference to you. And so we believe sometimes, or a lot of us believe sometimes, that if we don't have a certain title, if we don't have a certain type of job, if we didn't go to college, if we didn't do this, that, or the other, that we're not leaders. And we are all leaders. We are all called to lead. We are called to lead our families, our peers, our siblings. We are called also to follow. So if you cannot follow, you cannot be a good leader. If service is beneath you, leadership is beyond you. And so we can all show up as leaders in our lives, for ourselves, for others. And so we have to live as leaders, and that's what warriors do. When you believe as a warrior, you will live as a leader, and people will again gravitate towards you. I remember when I was a freshman in high school and I was on the debate team. And this was very early on in the school year, and we were learning sort of the art of debate and getting up there and speaking and presenting an argument. And I got up, and everybody, much to my surprise, was anticipating my very short 10-minute speech. I was 14, 15 at the time, and people were like, "Oh, this is going to be great. This is going to be good." And I felt this pressure of that it has to be something, and it has to be perfect. And I received some feedback from the teacher that I had not understood the instructions correctly, and I had done I'm very literal, and so when he gave us the format for the short form speech, he had given us specifics for transitions, and I did the transitions literally. So he gives me this feedback in front of the whole class, and this class, who when I stood up had become very quiet, and they were in their seats and they were just hanging on every word that I was saying. Again, I have no idea why, but when I received that feedback, and then I saw people sort of shift in their seats, and and sort of thinking, well, how could she make a mistake like that? I left the room, and I started crying, and I wasn't crying so much over the feedback. What I was crying over was this pressure to lead my class or be a leader in this class, because I did not know that was something that was expected of me. I'm just a student in this class like everyone else, and I have no idea why you all are looking to me to lead. And I think that was the first time I understood that a lot of people will naturally gravitate toward me as a leader, and some people don't. And it is a responsibility I view leadership as a responsibility, as a privilege. It's not a right. And so if somebody has looked at me and wants me to be a leader, or I am assigned to be a leader, I have a certain set of responsibilities. And that's when I fall back on that warrior belief system, on my values, and that servant leadership. Because to me, leadership is the right of the follower. It is the privilege of the leader. And by that, I mean that the follower should expect that as the leader, I'm going to be there for them. I'm going to walk through the fire first. I'm going to, as Simon Sinek says, eat last. And it doesn't matter if I have a title at all. It doesn't matter if it's, just within my family. It doesn't matter if it's within my community. Living as a leader means setting an example for others and having people treat you the way that you want to be treated, by treating them the way that they should be treated and having respect. So that is really, this is sort of a different video for today, but I felt like this was just so important to talk about, believing as a warrior believes and living as a leader lives, because, one, in this time of this changing time of our business landscape, our culture, and sort of this diffused leadership sort of thing where we sort of leave leadership to someone else. And we see this playing out at work when Gallup put out, I believe, 75% of people leave their jobs because of their manager. So that tells me, or I interpret that as, there is a crisis of leadership, not just in corporate America, but, in other places. I worked at a nonprofit where my manager was so awful, not just to me, but to others, and really used his power as a weapon. I worked for someone else whose turnover was nearly 100%. And it's not just in corporate America. And I know that we want to point the finger at bad corporate America. I do believe corporate America has created some bad habits that has bled out into other places. And I also think that public school, and I am a product of public schools, I support public schools, but I also think that there's ways that we indoctrinate students into a hierarchy, and that sort of that's just the way that things go. And that started way back in the industrial age. And I do believe that we need to be rethinking and reimagining public school education, and really helping students and young people think and form ideas for themselves, because I almost feel sometimes that it's become it's almost becoming a dying art to be able to form your idea and express it and have conversation around it. And whether it's a good idea or not is not the point, but just being able to have those conversations. One of the things that I do is I volunteer as a mentor working with high school students who are starting a business. This is an elective class for these high school students. And I work with a team in the whole entire school year. And this is amazing. Like, we weren't learning how to run a business when I was in grade school. We were taught, go to grade school, go to college, get a good job, die, retire, die. They're being taught at 15, 16, 17 to go to college if you want to, if that makes sense. Start a business if you want to, if that makes sense. If you want to do either one of those paths, this is how you do it. And they're teaching them. If you don't want to go to college, you don't want to start your own business, but maybe you want to go to trade school. And that's starting to seep into some of the school districts around the country. Certainly the more affluent school districts are having access to that type of information. But we have to reimagine our lives, and we have to take control of our destinies. And I almost feel like sometimes, given all of the information we now have access through, because of our phones, because of our computers. It's almost, I feel like as a society, and I include myself in this, have sometimes just sort of abdicated our lives to just sort of going from thing to thing to thing. And as warriors, we need to get back to what that mission is. What are our values? What's the vision for our life? And how can we bring others along? Because as a leader, my job is not to create followers. I'm not interested in creating followers. I am interested in turning followers into leaders. If people are following me, I want them to self-select into that followership. And then I want them to become leaders. And then I want them to exceed me. I want them to do better than me. I want people who that's why I want my content to be inspirational, informational, and implementable. Because when you turn off a video or you read a blog or you see a post, I want you to be able to take action and step into your destiny and step into that calling. So really, that's really all I wanted to talk about today. Like I said, today's a little different in terms of what today's content is, but I want you to believe as a warrior believes and live as a leader lives. I'm Nile Harris. Please take a moment to subscribe to my YouTube channel, turn on the alerts, and let's have a conversation. Let's connect on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at I am Nile Harris. And also you can catch me on LinkedIn at Nile Harris. And I look forward to catching you back here next time.